Welcome back to Movies TV Mad and welcome to Sunday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on today's Movies TV Mad Daily we're going to go back in time. Come on Marty! In the DeLorean, where we're going, we don't need roads, because we're going back to March to reread Variety's interview with Warner Brothers Pictures CEO Ann Sarnoff. Do you remember the one we called their hit piece? The one that made us all very, very angry? It made me angry. But since then I've learned a lot of things, and it certainly does take two to tango, and I understand now that Zack Snyder was as much of the problem as WB Pictures was. And by the way, what's going over at Disney between Kevin Feige and Disney Studios is an even worse situation. Yes, he will be leaving eventually. Remember I said that. Remember everything I say, you say I'm wrong. And most of the stuff I say turns out to be right. So get in my DeLorean, right, let's go. We don't need roads. Let's reread this article. Warner Media's Ann Sarnoff on Zack Snyder's Justice League and DC's future by Brent Lang. This was a huge coup for Brent at Variety at the time. He really got a great interview here, and she said everything she wanted to say. Now you must remember, Ann Sarnoff was very, very triggered and deliberate in this interview because one of her own had been bullied and attacked by Ray Fisher, Walter Hamada, who'd done nothing wrong. He was just echoing the company line. Ray Fisher should have targeted the studio, not Walter. And this is why I always felt there was racial undertones. Ray likes to accuse everyone of being racist, but I tell you what, I still don't understand why he targeted Walter Hamada so heavily. It doesn't look good. The optics aren't good, Ray, my friend, I'm afraid. But let's read it. Warner Media Studios CEO Ann Sarnoff says that the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League will complete the director's superhero trilogy, reinforcing the studio's desire to move past the social media campaign to hand back control of the DC film universe to the filmmaker. Instead, Sarnoff believes that the future of DC is more than just movies. She's excited about a multi-platform future, one that sees Batman, Superman and the Flash and other Justice League members popping up on streaming shows. Now, we weren't really looking at this at the time because we were all triggered. So, just remember what we're saying here. One that sees Batman, Superman, the Flash and other Justice League members. We're talking about Justice League members. Cavill, Miller, Gadot, all turning up on these shows. That means the potential is that your favourite members of the Justice League could turn up in Gotham PD. Well, they can't because it's Earth 2. That'll be other versions of those characters. But things like Peacemaker, I think we could have some crossovers there. So very, very exciting. As we reread this, and there's a lot of stuff I've forgotten about this interview. So, she's excited about the multi-platform future, one that sees Batman, Superman, the Flash and other Justice League members popping up on streaming shows, video games, television spin-offs and big screen outings. It's a vision that echoes what Marvel has been doing with its Avengers characters, taking superheroes like the Vision, the Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye and Loki, who have previously appeared only in movies, and giving them streaming shows of their own. The Warner Media Studio chief is also excited about the diverse range of creators she's been enlisting to tell some of these stories, which includes tapping between the world and me, author Ta-Nehisi Coates, to write a Superman film, or developing a Blue Beetle, which marks the company's first Latinx superhero movie. So these are all good things. I know there's some controversy about a Superman movie we haven't even seen yet. Judge it when you see the trailer at least. But Sarnoff may have to deal with an unruly and emboldened fan base. You see, she was very, very triggered by Snyder's fan base, and she was definitely going to talk about this. One that successfully pushed Warner Media to release a 4-hour R-rated version of Justice League, which was truer to Snyder's darker vision for the characters. Sarnoff spoke to Variety on Sunday, 5 days after the Snyder Cut started streaming on HBO Max, so she was very much aware that this was a successful thing by this point. That's important. about catering to DC's fan base, the future of DC, and actor Ray Fisher's allegations of misconduct and racial bias during the shooting of Justice League. Why did you decide to release Zack Snyder's Justice League? We wanted to give Zack the opportunity to complete his vision in a 4-hour movie, which is impossible to do in theatres. We're happy that we have HBO Max to let the rope out, as it were, and allow the fans to see all 4 hours of Zack's vision. What are your plans going forward for DC? We've got an incredible group of creators, television series creators, Max series creators, feature film creators, who are basically broadening the base of the talent that we work with on DC, because we're so excited about the potential to build out the DC multiverse. So already we're talking about the multiverse, which is very important. It's one of the reasons why I was hired almost 2 years ago. It was one of the reasons I was hired, basically to sort DC out, right? That's what she's saying, really. It's one of the reasons why I was hired almost 2 years ago. The before and after was, it was a silhouette organisation with no connectivity between the businesses. Now, she's spoken about this before, and this is important. DC was being developed, but in a kind of monolithic way in each division. My mantra coming in was to make it bigger and broader, and we really want to surprise and delight the fans with more connective tissue across the various medias and platforms. I'm talking movies, HBO Max, television, and our games division, which means you can get crossovers. You can have Cavill's Superman in a game, and it's a very exciting vision. Can they pull it off? They've announced a lot of stuff since this interview. This was her mission statement, and to be fair to her and everyone at DC and WB, she stuck to it, because all these announcements have come out and they've kept on coming, and things are looking good. The Snyder Cut came about because of a fan campaign online. Do you feel like you need to strike a balance between being responsive to fans and charting your own course as a company? How responsive do you believe DC should be? We're always going to listen to our fans, but we are in a service of the broadest fan base, and we owe them an integrated, holistic strategy. We are the shepherds of the franchise, and hopefully when the fans see what we've got in store, they'll know that DC is in good hands across many different platforms. With many different creators, we want different voices in the mix. For certain fans that want singular voices, they may be disappointed. Right, so let me tell you what she's saying. For fans who want singular voices, as you don't know what she's saying to the Snyder fans, no, your man is not going to run the DC Extended Universe, because the DC Extended Universe is fucking dead. It's now the DC Extended Multiverse, run by a multitude of different talented creatives. And by the way, this is my reread, and now I'm not triggered by this. I like this. This is the way to go. Over at Marvel, they've had great success basically by being run by one dictator. That's not me being toxic towards Kevin, but he is a dictator. He's running the whole thing. Now, this is going to be interesting to see how a whole different magnitude of voices working together, sitting around the table. Walter Hamada, Greg Berlanti, Ann Sarnoff, all these people. There's Jim Lee, people who know about DC, people who have had to look into DC a bit more. But I think this is a more interesting, balanced, collective idea. Ann Sarnoff has got great history in entertainment. She's very good at what she does. Despite the Snyder fans' hatred for her, she is very good at what she does. Make no mistake, and she is not going anywhere. But we would ask them to be patient and see what we've got in store, because perhaps the newer voices in the mix will have just as compelling stories to tell. In other words, maybe this new team will have just as many compelling stories to tell as Zack Snyder did. On balance, you of course want to listen to your fans, but we do want to stay true to our vision and our mission for DC and build that out. We have weekly meetings with our key executives in every division. Last August, I was made head of studios and networks, and I now have all of the creative groups underneath me. So now around that table is not just Warner Brothers Film, Warner Brothers Television, and Warner Brothers Warner Brothers Games, but it includes HBO and HBO Max and the Turner networks, Adult Swim and the Kids and Family networks. We are involving all of those people in our plans going forward, and that means the media is going to be more connected. What she's saying here is you could have Adult Swim characters in a DC animated movie. You can have DC characters in an Adult Swim animation guest starring. That's very exciting as well. We saw that somewhat in Space Jam 2. By the way, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that's a good idea. Sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes in more overt ways, like opposite the Suicide Squad. We're spinning out Peacemaker with James Gunn and John Cena, passionately developing that for HBO Max. It's my job to make sure we super serve our fans across all demos and all fan bases. What she's saying is, we will not represent one fan base, the Snyder fan base. We've represented them now. We've released the Snyder Cut. Enough already. It's time for us to move forward, represent everyone so we can make some real money. That's the key. That's the perspective she comes from. If she pleases everyone apart from one fan base, they please a broader audience. And the broader audiences in these franchises are the key. There's also been a toxic side to the fandom, with reports that critics and some of your executives have received threats for not endorsing the Snyder Cut or for being perceived as standing in the way of its release. What's your reaction to that behaviour? So, there's no question about it. And I mean, again, I was very defensive when I first read this, but there's no question about it. There is a darker side to the Release the Snyder Cut, Restore the Snyderverse community. Now, most of us are very nice, placid, constructive people, but there are those people who take it to another fucking level, and it's no good denying their existence. We're not tolerating any of that. That behaviour is reprehensible no matter what franchise you're talking about or what business you're talking about. It's completely unacceptable. I am very disappointed in the fans that have chosen to go to that negative place. With regard to DC, with regard to some of our executives, it's just disappointing because we want this to be a safe place to be. Let me say it again, because we want this to be a safe place to be. We want DC to be a fandom that feels safe and inclusive. We want people to be able to speak up for the things they love, but we don't want it to be a culture of cancelling things that any small faction isn't happy with. We are not about that. We are about positivity and celebration. Evidence of that is DC fandom. So what they're saying to the Snyderverse community, right, is not just about you. We've given you what you want. You've had Man of Steel, you had BVS, you've had the Suicide Squad, you've had Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. It is done. It is over. Now we're rebranding this to make it for more people. That's what the multiverse strategy is all about. And I know that some of you will go after me and reread my reaction originally, but I've already stated that. I was very defensive before, but now I know a lot more about this situation and what's been going on. I'm embracing this. I'm excited for this. The campaign for Release the Snyder Cut has moved into a new phase. It's now Restore the Snyderverse. What's your reaction to this new campaign? Again, when I first read this, before I read this, I actually believed that Zack would get the keys to the kingdom. At that time, I wanted him to. And I believed with the popularity and the great reviews of Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, that could happen. I was so wrong because I didn't know how Snyder had treated the studio, you know, and how much they fell out yet again. Not only did he fall out with the original leader of the studio, Kevin Sugihara, he then fell out with everyone. He had people on his side originally, people like Jason Kilar. He turned them against him. I didn't know this at the time. I appreciate they love Zack's work, and we are very thankful for his many contributions to DC. We are just so happy that we could bring his cut of the Justice League to life, because that wasn't in the plan until about a year ago. With that comes the completion of his trilogy. Whoa, that's a stinger, isn't it? We're very happy we've done this, but we are very excited about the plans we have for all the multi-dimensional DC characters that are being developed right now. Will there be more of these director's cuts? Will we see David Ayer's cut of the Suicide Squad? Now, this was in March, remember? April, May, June, July, August, 5 months ago, right? Looking at the DC slate, there seems to be right, yeah, so let's go back. Will there be more of these director's cuts? Will we see David Ayer's cut of the Suicide Squad? Ann Sarnoff, we won't be developing David Ayer's cut. That was 5 months ago. I believe Anne was very triggered at the time, and I think she has calmed down, and other people have calmed down at the studio. I believe there's a changing of the mind here, and you could have an announcement for David Ayer's cut of the his Suicide Squad movie, probably when everything's settled down, and maybe when James Gunn's The Suicide Squad has gone through its domestic digital, DVD, Blu-ray 4K, that run, then you might hear something. Don't, take it with a pinch of salt, a big grain of salt, but that's what I think is going to happen. Looking at the DC slate, there seems to be an emphasis on creating opportunities for diverse creators and characters. You've got a Latino superhero movie with Blue Beetle, Sasha Calle becoming the first Latinx actress to portray Supergirl, and Ta-Nehisi Coates writing a Superman movie. Is there a concerted effort to take the brand in a more inclusive direction? You know what? I do like the inclusion I'm seeing in DC, because it is African American, but it's also Latinx, it's also Asian. I like that. That's what we want to see. We can't just be representing the most represented minority because they shout the loudest. Everyone needs, a fair swing of the bat. It's super important to me. It's in line with what we want to do. We want to branch out and let creators interpret parts of the universe in unique and special ways. Ta-Nehisi working on Superman is incredibly exciting. I can't wait to see what he comes up with. And director Andy Muschietti on The Flash, or Patty Jenkins, Matt Reeves just finished filming The Batman against the odds of COVID. We're so excited to finish that movie and have people see it, because Matt's take on Batman is different than other takes. Even familiar characters have lots of possibilities. Yeah, Matt's take is more faithful to the comics, I can tell you that as well. Done in an original, unique Matt Reeves way. Can't wait to see that movie. You talked about breaking down silos in the company. What does that mean for DC? Creators want to have franchises that are larger than life, but oftentimes you start working with a company and that company has discrete divisions. So you become a film creator, you become a television creator, and never the twain shall meet. This is a great point. My role is to pull people together towards a vision that can make the whole more than the sum of the parts. One of the key aspects of that is having a long-range plan. Remember when they said DC and WB don't have a plan? Of course, they've always had a plan, and Walter Hamada has had a plan since 2018. These movies and TV series can take plus years to make. So if you're not planning out and bringing other people into the plan, that further accentuates the silos. It's having the plan, then it's having the strategy, where all of the various businesses work in harmony to create the plan. Something that wasn't happening, of course, between Zack Snyder and WB, and I think that's partially what she's talking about. Having the strategy where all the various business works in harmony to create the plan. It seems logical, but it's very rarely done well. One of the things that I said to the group early was never let your fans see your org chart. And boy, could the fans see our org charts in 2019. That's very interesting. Now, I don't really know what an org chart is, but it seems to me that maybe there were mistakes made, and this is what Ann's referring to. As I say, Ann Sarnoff may not win the Nobel Peace Prize, but Ann Sarnoff has worked with BBC America, BritBox America. She has done a fabulous job. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she's the best person to lead this team. Now, we talk about David Zaslav and Discovery and people being removed, right? If this company's making money by the time Zaslav comes in, no one ain't getting removed, but he will bring a few of his people in. It's going to be interesting. Because if something isn't broken, he ain't going to break it. He's about making money. How do viewers and fans see the org charts when it comes to DC? They saw this character in saw this character in movies, and it had nothing to do with that character in TV. Creating that more unified vision, which is coming together with Peacemaker spinning off to the Suicide Squad, and you'll see a lot more of that going forward. You'll see original things in businesses that don't relate, and that's okay too, but we're in charge of that decision making about whether to connect dots or not. So what she's saying is, in the past, TV and movies haven't been connected with DC or anything. She's connecting it all together. This is a very, very exciting idea. We don't want to be predictable. We want fans to spot Easter eggs at the end of the movie that relate to a movie or a show coming up or a show about to launch on HBO Max. We can harken back to something that was said in the Flash movie, or there could be a cameo appearance of one of the actors from one movie into a current show. Again, very, very exciting. Ray Fisher has accused Warner Brothers executives of racially biased behaviour and of trying to impede an investigation into alleged misconduct on the set of Justice League. Did your investigation corroborate any of his claims of racism on the part of your employees? No. Our investigator Judge Catherine Forrest has issued statements specifically about DC Films president Walter Hamada, saying that there was no evidence of interference by Walter in the investigation. She said that the cuts made in Joss Whedon's version of Justice League were not racially motivated. I believe that, by the way. We took it very seriously, so we hired one of the top investigators out there and gave her a tremendous amount of leeway. Ray Fisher has previously stated that because of a non-disclosure agreement, he can't share specifics about the abusive behaviour he endured on the set of Justice League. Is there an NDA that will prevent him from publicly sharing all the details of what transpired on Justice League? No, not that I know of, no. Editor's note, a spokesperson for Fisher responded for Variety's request for a comment with the following statement. Mr. Fisher is no longer under NDA and will comment further when appropriate to do so. How funny, how funny. Yeah, he's been commenting a bit, but he still hasn't leaked or released anything. It's interesting. Maybe he will. Maybe he's still got something up his sleeve. We will see. Walter Hamada has been on the receiving end of a lot of fan criticism. What was his involvement in the production of Justice League? This is a brilliant one she got them to ask. Walter had nothing to do with Justice League. He was not running DC Films in 2017 when Justice League was completed and released. He wasn't put in charge of DC Films until the following year, about a year ago. Walter, Warner Brothers Pictures Group, and head Toby Emmerich, me, former Warner Media Chairman Bob Greenblatt, former HBO Max Content Chief Kevin Riley, and HBO Max original programming head Sarah Albury sat around the table with Zack and greenlit the Snyder Cut. That cut includes Ray Fisher's entire story as Cyborg, which is something he had been disappointed had been cut from the Justice League movie 3 years ago. Perhaps we've lost the plot a little bit, which is that Toby and Walter were part of the green lighting that allowed Zack's vision to come to life, which includes sharing the full story about Ray's character. There really was nothing that Walter did against Ray. In fact, he offered him a role in the Flash movie, which Ray Fisher didn't want. He was stirring the pot because his activism was more important than his acting career or the Flash movie or the Cyborg character, even though he keeps on screaming Borg life. If you want to fall for that bullshit, you can. Walter was promoted recently. I am fully supportive of Toby and Walter and their visions. I truly believe they are great executives. Walter happens to be a person of colour, so he knows what that feels like. He's bringing in diverse voices at an accelerated pace, more than anyone has in the past, true? You talked about enlisting a broad range of voices when it comes to charting the future of DC. Is there one person calling the shots? This was interesting. The connective tissue in the middle is Jim Lee, who oversees DC Comics. Jim lives and breathes the canon of DC, and he works with all of the divisions to make sure the storylines are true to the canon. He helps them come up with ideas for new storylines. Jim is very much in the middle of everything, but the group together helps spur on new ideas. There's not one person calling the shots, because I want all voices in the room to offer their expertise and knowledge of their formats. This is interesting, very interesting. This is like the writer's room concept, right? So you have a writer of an episode, but they all sit in the writer's room giving ideas, right? Maybe, you know, this character has wings this week or something nonsensical like that, but everyone has a voice and you get more ideas out there and you can shoot down something that might come across bad when people see it. So this is a very good idea, a very good idea. As superheroes pop up in movies, on television, streaming shows and games, how do you make sure they're not too much of a good thing? Couldn't that lead to oversaturation? One of the reasons I'm excited about our strategy going forward, it is multi-dimensional. We're not just serving the same fan base with the same creative vision. We're trying to expand it. Not every fan has to love every piece of what we're doing. That's a great point. But we're putting out more tentacles to be able to reach people with different stories on different platforms. So there isn't fatigue. It's not just the same cadence. We're going to mix things up. We all have a slate of DC movies, but it will be a richer and more multi-dimensional with a broader array of characters, and that will help reduce the fatigue because you'll see a whole story about the Flash. Then you'll see sequels like Aquaman 2 or new takes on Superman or Shazam, which plays to a family audience. There would be fatigue if we stayed on a more singular path, aka the Snyderverse. But because we are broadening, we will have much more potential to grow the fan base across various demos and various types of fans. That's the whole point. That's what you have to do to be successful. So that was I had a much better time reading the article than I did last time. I think much of what she says is brilliant. I think her plans are brilliant. What she says about having a multitude of voices in the room is much better than one singular voice. As I say, Kevin Feige has been very successful by being the dictator of Marvel Studios and the MCU. But even you can see now that dictatorship is running dry. And I'm very interested to see how that plays out. They've already had one flop. How many more flops will they have? And if WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier weren't on streaming, maybe they would have been cinematic flops as well. We'll never know. I think Ann Sarnoff has presented us with a great opportunity. I believe our slate of television shows, our slate of movies are very, very exciting. And I couldn't be more excited to look forward of the future of DC live action. So now I've reread the article, I want to know in the comments down below, are you still triggered by it? Were you triggered before? Do you back Ann Sarnoff, Walter Hamada and Jim Lee? I certainly do. Comments down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back in the next video. See you again soon.